Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. This morning, our focus is on the well-being of children, particularly children in foster care. Supporting youth in foster care through the pandemic can be even more challenging than the usual day-to-day care given by parents, foster, and kinship caregivers. And my first guests are here to tell us how their organization can help. Susan Conwell is the Executive Director of Kids Matter Incorporated, and Lance Jones is a legal advocate for the court-appointed Special Advocate Program, also referred to as CASA. Good morning. How are you?
Great. Thanks for inviting us.
We're
So
happy to be
happy.
here.
Glad to have you join me. And for children in the welfare system who cannot continue living at home with his or her parents, kinship care is an option that can help reduce that family stress or temporary family issues. So keeping a child with family not only keeps them in an environment around people that they're comfortable with and that they know, but it also makes the transition of them going back to their homes easier. So, Lance, is that where your court-appointed special advocate volunteers come in?
That is one of the area where the CASA volunteers come in. A court-appointed special advocate volunteer can work with any child who has been abused or neglected and for whom there is a case out at children's court. So that includes a lot of children who are in kinship care, staying with grandma, auntie, older sibling, or even a close family friend. In addition to children who are in kinship care, CASA volunteers also work with children who are placed with their parents, but under the supervision of the court, or children who have been placed in foster care with a family who is not related to them biologically. So wherever a child may be, if that child has been abused or neglected and the children's court is active in that child's life, a CASA volunteer may participate in that child's life and advocate for what's best for that child.
Mm-hmm. So that one-on-one where the child feels comfortable really telling them how they feel about maybe where they're going or where they've been or the situation that they're dealing with at hand.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that this is a relationship on top of the other relationships in the child's life. With the case manager, the child will have an attorney, whether that child is a babe in arms or a teenager. But the CASA volunteer is that relational advocate, that person who sees the child frequently, once a week, who sees that child in each environment where that child is involved: school, home, other environments, activities. The CASA is really trying to get a 365-degree picture of the child and add that information to the court's other sources of information about that family and that child in order to restore that child to a safe, permanent, and loving home.
Gotcha. Now, Susan, we've got a great example of really what the court-appointed special advocate program does within Kids Matter, Inc. So for those who may not know, what are some of the other things that your organization offers?
Well, I think to start with, it's important for people to know that nearly 1 in 10 kids today is raised outside of having a parent in the home. So it's a significant population. And for every child in foster care, there's another 20 that get taken in by relatives outside of the formal foster care system. So we have another program called Fostering Healing, and people come from really all over Milwaukee, all over the state. Courts refer, hospitals refer, when family members are taking in a child. Because today, for example, we've all heard about how anxiety is impacting young people under COVID. And when grandma's just stepping up to help, grandma can't sign a kid up for counseling unless she becomes that child's guardian. And you can be a temporary guardian, you can be a full-time guardian. We provide free legal services for families And it's hard to navigate the courts on your own. Let's just face it. It's really hard. And so that's a really special and unique service we provide. We also provide free counseling, and we really specialize in some of the more traumatic circumstances that are leading kids to be separated.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people think that, say, child protection responds to homicides or parent deaths of overdoses and other things that are, we're really having a record breaking rate of homicide in Milwaukee last year and this year under COVID, and also overdose deaths. So really hard things for families to cope with. And then they're facing 6-month waiting lists for counseling. So we can step in and provide free crisis counseling. We also have donations that, just kind of the navigational help, like how do I help my kid's school understand what just happened so that they can do that in a positive way, but without it turning into the kind of social media blurb that isn't helpful to kids. So
totally makes sense. And so I should mention both of you are attorneys, so you fully understand what needs to take place legally and become a resource for so many of those people who step up to care for a child in the foster care system. So when we look at the system in general, the systems are overwhelmed. It's been that way for a while, but as you mentioned, under the pandemic, there's so much more that it really is safe to say it's gone to another level. So statistics show that COVID-19 actually ramped up the anxieties and concerns of many children, and distant learning hurt a lot of the kids academically. So how have you been able to step in and help as far as that's concerned?
So for the first time ever, we've even been handing out computers to kids. So when you think about how many systems went remote, now you're going to court on your phone or needing a computer. And so everything from switching the counseling to remote so that more people can get access, helping with even more diverse array of donations than we've done in the past, like so people can have technology at home. And then honestly, we're even doing a lot of tutoring about how to use it, because if you're thinking about our grandparents or people who are over 70 now navigating court on a computer, navigating school on a computer, when that was not their preferred way to interact in the first place, it was a big leap. Yeah. So making sure that there's support for families in our population in that way. So
that's great. I love that. And at Kids Matter, Inc., you found that a child with a CASA volunteer is more likely to actually succeed in school, learn resilience, and they're half as likely to re-enter the foster care system. So how are those CASA volunteers approaching the subject of education as you navigate through this pandemic? You've explained that, you're there as a resource for those parents, but are they working one-on-one with the kids as well to help them with where they stand academically?
Yes, CASA volunteers are working with children both virtually and in person. In the pandemic, one of the biggest educational impacts has been on children in need of special education services. Many of those children have not been able to navigate online learning. It's very difficult, even for adults, to sit in front of a screen for 6 hours and interact. Can you imagine what it may be like for a child who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or a child that may have a hearing impairment? Our CASA volunteers have been working to make sure that the children that they work with have means of instruction that are appropriate for those children. And as we return to school, now that it's fall, CASA volunteers are very active in making sure that individualized educational programs for youth that have special needs are being updated and are being followed. Because for many kids, it's been a year and a quarter since they've been in a classroom, and much of their paperwork could be out of date. Their needs may have changed. And as we follow through on the return to school, CASA volunteers will be making sure that the children that they work with are given the right tools to succeed after having been out of the classroom physically for a long time.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, prior to COVID, there was an emergency statewide dealing with the opioid epidemic. Susan, you spoke on that a little bit earlier, and other serious issues such as violence and things of that nature. But one of the main goals of having you here today is to let our viewers know that they can be confident in getting the information that they need by contacting your organization, and many times it is absolutely free of charge. So please go ahead and reiterate the message of what you want the viewers to know.
Well, I think one of the most important things is that you're not alone. So prior to COVID, the Wisconsin Counties Association had done a major campaign because there are record-breaking numbers of kids coming into care in every county except Milwaukee. For a bunch of reasons. It's not that we're not having the same problems. In Milwaukee, we're more likely to say to a relative, how about you take the child in, right? So we want people to know that they're not alone and that there's help available, because a lot of times, whether it's family violence or somebody struggling with addiction, it can feel very much like you're the only family having this problem, and it's just not true. And people are more alone than they have been. You mentioned even just the anxiety level that children are experiencing. A lot of us weren't prepared for that by itself, and now they have a parent who's struggling more, or a family member, and people feel very stretched. So yes, all of our services are free, and we are absolutely here to help people navigate that. We understand that a lot of people don't really, how do you access the courts? That's tough. We help with that all the time. And sometimes you don't need the court. I mean, and we can walk people how to do stuff, how to engage, how to set up a safe situation for a child, how to manage, visitation, all those kinds of things in a safe way, with or without the courts. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that there are other ways that people at home can help. You have community partnerships and donation drives that you have to help make a difference with the children and the families that you serve. So they can go to your website to find out more about that. But as we wrap up, I wanted you to let those who are at home watching know how they could, in fact, become a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for Kids Matter, Inc.
Certainly, Andrea. This is a great time to become a CASA volunteer, because we have a CASA volunteer training beginning the first week of October. If you are interested in becoming an advocate for a child, I encourage you to go to our website at www.kidsmatterinc.org/CASA, C-A-S-A. The application link is there. There's also more information about the court-appointed special advocate program in Milwaukee. If you have questions and would like to talk to somebody, please give me a call. The Kids Matter telephone number is 414-344-1220, and ask to speak to me, Lance. I'd be happy to talk to you about the possibility of becoming a court-appointed special advocate. All you need to do is bring an open heart and an open mind. We do the background check and all of the teaching.
Well, thank you so much. It's so good to catch up with you guys. Of course, you've been on the show before, but so much has happened since the last time we spoke about the outstanding things that you do there at Kids Matter, Inc. And I just thank you for your time and all that you do.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Susan Conwell is the executive director of Kids Matter, Inc. And Lance Jones is a legal advocate for the court-appointed Special Advocate Program. For more information on anything that we've discussed, again, you can visit their website at kidsmatterinc.org or call 414-344-1220. When we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll continue our conversation about the well-being of children in foster care and be joined by Cornelia Smith, who serves as a trauma specialist for Kids Matter, Inc. We'll do that right after this.